Early morning, and I'm glad that all of you are here so early in the morning. And before I start the sessions, which is hosted by Sophia, let me do some housekeeping announcement. Okay, so for actually we offer this session to be in English, but we offer translation for Spanish. If you need a translation, and then the headset is actually outside. And just a couple of housekeeping announcements, which you'll probably hear multiple times over the 2 days. And please carry your badge anytime because it's the access to all the sessions and social events. And if you still have not downloaded the conference app, please do so at the App Store by searching for this World News Media Congress 2022. That's the information that you need to access throughout the 2 days. And if you need to make a tweet, just refer to the hashtag over here. And today the sessions is layering AI into News24, News Digital Subscription Business, and it's hosted by Sophi. And we have moderator Sonali on the right side, a beautiful lady, and Adriaan from News24 South Africa. And with that, I hand over to Sonali. Sorry. Okay, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone for coming out so early in the morning. When I was walking back to my hotel last evening through the old town, I saw a lot of familiar faces, a lot of conference tags, and I know it was hard to get up this morning, so thank you for making it. And special thanks to Adriaan, who I'll tell you about in just a second. But first, a little bit about me. I'm a journalist by background. I work for Sophi, which is the data science and digital division, a startup within the Globe and Mail, which is Canada's national newspaper. We built Sophi as a platform for analytics 10 years ago to solve our own problems in the news business, which is to balance that tension between ad revenue and subscription revenue to really help our newsroom understand the role that content plays in driving subscriptions, because we put up a paywall in 2010. And from there, it evolved into this artificial intelligence machine learning system, because we realized that if we can analyze everything, the next step is to be able to predict and then optimize and automate everything. So now we use Sophi to decide what content to place behind the paywall. We use it to run an intelligent, dynamic paywall as well, which has replaced our meter, so that every person who comes to our website gets a personalized experience. So Adriaan might be asked to pay the first time he comes. I might be asked to register after I've read a few articles. And you may never be asked to pay because you're generating a lot of ad revenue for us, and Sophi can see that you are the kind of person who would never pay us anyway. So we don't want to cut you off. We want to engage you further and let you consume our content and ask you for the right thing at the right time. So I first met Adriaan 3 years ago at a WAN-IFRA conference in Glasgow and then a study tour in London, and it was the start of a beautiful friendship. He is the editor-in-chief at News24, which is part of one of Africa's largest publishers, and a journalistic heavyweight in his own right, formidable intellectual, great writer, knows for news. And so we were very happy and very grateful when Adriaan said, look, I would like to use Sophi at my news organization so that we can go even farther, even faster. So News24 is the leading news organization in a country of 60 million people, a country which regularly makes headlines on front pages across the world because there's a lot of news going on there. And they were the first to put up a paywall in a market where everyone else was just giving content away for free. So a very brave decision, and one that called for not just courage, but also innovation. So maybe we'll start there, Adriaan. Would you like to paint a picture for us of where you were 2 years ago when you started on this digital subscriptions journey, what you were thinking, what your challenges were, and of course, then how you made a tremendous success of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonali. Good morning, everyone, colleagues. Nice to see you here. Thanks for coming so early. I hope the coffee is good. Yeah, we were... Oh, I'm sorry to hear. There'll be wine later. Look, News24 is a strange animal because we've always been a digital publication in a group that has many newspapers that's 100 years old. But News24 was launched in 1998 as a free English breaking news website. The internet was just taking off big time globally, and our company, predecessors of mine, decided to launch the website. So we are a bit of a digital veteran, which makes us a unique animal. We didn't have the print legacy, which makes things easier sometimes, but we've always been digital, and that brought its own legacies and its own comfort zones. So, you know, we built a massive audience over 20 years. You know, we have about 13 to 15 million users a month on the site. But like all of us, all of you, we realize that this business is not sustainable if it's solely dependent on advertising. Google and Facebook eat us for breakfast. So, you know, how do you build a sustainable newsroom and grow your newsroom to do the type of content that not only people will pay for, but that actually strengthens democracy? South Africa, as some of you may know, is quite a young democracy, only 28 years old. Since we've been a democracy, we have a constitution, but there's constant attacks on our constitution. There's constantly actors, politically, business, and in crime, who tries to undermine the values of our constitution and the institutions. And an independent, strong media is incredibly important at this juncture in our history. So all these things together brought us to the natural conclusion that we had to start charging for news. What a crazy idea. Where in the world has anyone done that? Well, by the way, people have done it for hundreds of years, of course, when it was on paper. I grew up in a house where there was always newspapers, and there was a tradition of paying for news, but we realized that many of our readers and customers did not grow up in a tradition where they paid for news. Specifically, if you were born with the internet was free for many years. And thank goodness news also caught up, because the internet is no longer free, and specifically the quality internet isn't free and shouldn't be free. So that's a long story that brought us to the natural conclusion that to sustain our business model and to strengthen democracy, we had to launch a paywall. What to do? Do you lock everything? Do you lock certain content? And that, thank goodness, is when you came into my life.
And so, thank you. And so tell me a little bit about how you made decisions when you first put up the paywall. How did you decide, oh, we should place this behind the wall, we should leave this free? Because I'm sure you were also feeling that tension between ad revenue and subscription revenue, and you want to maximize everything.
Yeah. It was tough. I mean, we loved the page views. We loved the vanity numbers. I'm sure all of us, you know, absolutely love to brag to our mothers about how many page views our stories got. But at the end of the day, that might not secure your job and the country on the long term. So we had to firstly work on a culture change in the newsroom, to tell our journalists and to get them to buy in to the fact that we are now going to lock some of their stories. So we very early on decided that we cannot have a hard paywall. There's very good news publishers in South Africa. Some of our competitors are really good. They also do breaking news. They do public service news, car accidents, crime and court, natural disasters, those kind of stories. We cannot put that behind the paywall. That would be silly. We'll cut off our own throat. So what we realize is that the content that will convert has to be in-depth, quality, unique, something that you can't get elsewhere, opinions that you can't get elsewhere. But, you know, was I now going to have to hire 20 people to sift through our 150, 200 stories that we publish per day to decide what is quality, and what is quality to you and me may not be the same thing. So what I really liked about when I met you and Gordon in 2019 was you both came out of the newsroom, firstly. There's a journalist trust thing. And the way Sophi was first introduced to me over some lovely gin in London was, this is a quality metric. And for me, that was a big mind shift from a vanity metric to a quality metric. This is actually a metric that can tell you what is quality. What does quality mean in that sense? Well, quality and content people will pay for. So what I love about the tech that you guys have developed is we now not only look at vanity metrics, we still have to. We still have a strong offering of free content as well, and have a still strong advertising business. But what the Sophi dashboards taught us was that there's another metric that you need to look at, which is conversion and retention. So conversion, this topic is likely to convert subscribers. So Sophi picks it up. It knows what our readers love. It knows what readers pay for. So we have a dashboard that tells us, oh, this story that you've ranked in position 6, 7, or 12, or even 30 is very likely to actually bring you subscribers. You better rank it up. In addition to that, the retention dashboard that tells us these are the stories that your current subscribers that you already have absolutely love. You need to keep on feeding them. So the one word that wasn't part of my world was churn before we launched the paywall. There's lots of funny words and terms in the paywall business that my commercial colleagues knows much more about. But I learned very quickly that churn is evil. So churn is a subscriber that you won finally to pay you and then leaves you. Like a bad breakup. We should always prevent bad breakups, right? So the retention dashboard shows me what content my current subscribers that we've worked so hard that we've spent money on to convert, what do they read? And it's fascinating to look at these 3 dashboards at the same time. Sorry, I love this a lot, so I'm talking a lot about it. But
Please.
to look at the vanity metrics, which you still have to, so the top 10 most page view read stories on News24 at any given moment, the top 10 stories that will bring you new subscribers right at the moment, and the top 10 stories that keeps your current subscribers happy and coming back, and then to try and rank that together. So it was just really a very useful tool that helped me a lot to sell it to my newsroom. It introduced a whole new language into our newsroom. People started talking about this mythical Sophi. I heard you introduce the Sophi this morning, so I always think of you when you talk about Sophi, although your name is obviously not Sophi. But Sophi became this almost living thing in our newsroom. What is my Sophi score? Who had the best acquisition scores this month? Once a month we have a shout-out event where we announce the journalists that had the most conversions, the journalists that had the highest retention score. And for me as a journalist, as a true, heart and soul journalist, that's a comfortable metric. That's a metric I take pride in. Always felt dirty about the page view metric, right? Because it just means like the story that people clicked on most, But this is actually a quality metric. Quality, my story was worth paying for. We got readers for our website that's going to help us hire more reporters. Just the last point before I shut up. What was lovely for me with launching a paywall was I made a deal with our CEO that if we get X amount of subscribers, we can grow a newsroom. And he kept his side of the deal. I don't know if he's here. And I'm not just saying it to, score brownie points. But, as a journalist, as an editor, I can now go to my CEO and say, hey, look what we've contributed to your bottom line. Come on, more investigative journalists, more political journalists. And we've been able to do that over the past 2 years.
So that's quite a success story. How many subscribers do you have now? The paywall's been up for 2 years. I think you launched it in August 2 years ago. How many subscribers do you have now?
I'll give you the long answer. So when we launched, it was a very stressful, anxious day, mid-August 2020, 19th of August, I think. We had our mix of stories ready. We had a big investigation into our vice president, whose diary we managed to obtain through an access to information application, and we found that our vice president was spending most of his time not working, doing his paid job, but doing party work. So we had a big scoop ready, we had great content, and we launched this thing, and we were watching the dashboards, So we managed to convert about 15,000 subscribers in the first month of launch, which we thought was fantastic. Every time there was another 1,000, which we had cheers. But today we're on 62,000, 62,000 subscribers. In 2 years. We're very proud, we're very happy. Of course, it's still much less than our total users, who come to read the news for free. But, I think we must be realistic. In this world, there's always going to be a lot of people who want to read the top news, but don't want to pay. They're probably never going to pay. And you must decide if your publication wants to also be there for them, or if you want to go only subscription, or somewhere in the middle. I think there's a space for all of those models. So what works for us is a freemium model. So we lock probably about 20% of our content. If you have to kind of put it all in a basket and do the calcs, probably about 20% of our content is only available to subscribers. 80% still freely available to anyone. But we also have a registration wall, which I think we're going to have to focus on more going forward to get people to register. So we have about 1.2 million registered users. They get things like like registration newsletters, access to traffic updates on our app, the ability to read comments. Only subscribers can comment at the bottom of our stories, but registered users can read the comments. So you have to think of your readers in those 3 layers: free, registered, subscribers, and then figure out what model works for you. In this world of subscription, as you well know, there's lots of levers you can pull and change. And what I find very exciting is, even just 2 years ago, we had to kind of choose a model, metered paywall, hard paywall, or freemium. Today, when I look at these vendors here, of which you guys are one, and listen to other people, I mean, this dynamic hybrid model of paywalling is absolutely fascinating, where you can now, put up a paywall for every unique person, basically. So I think that's the way we're going to have to start thinking about it. There is, though, I will say, not unlike the very long historic years of daily newspapers, there is a tradition now that I've seen clearly, where our subscribers wake up in the morning and want a basket of good content. That's also the time of the day when many people have a bit like half an hour or 45 minutes to read, probably when they're still waking up with the coffee. So what works really well for us is that strong exclusive story in the morning. There's, I think, one of them up on the screen, but it's that scoop, it's that interview with the politician, it's the investigative expose, it's the we have a big energy crisis in South Africa at the moment. We very seldom have electricity for the whole day, so it's about getting into those stories, as we've done with our investigations team. And when you have that big story that brings people to the side, it lifts all the boats. The day's traffic looks good. The day's conversion looks good. So every morning at our diary meeting at 9:30 a.m., we look at our Sophi numbers for the previous day, and we look at our conversions. So we see which stories got the biggest acquisition scores, retention, and how many subscribers we converted on a day. If we don't hit the 200 subscribers on a day mark, we're kind of sad. But churn is evil, but churn is real, and there's obviously a plethora of other issues that also contribute to that.
So you're obviously very proud of your journalism here, and you clearly go out and hire the smartest people you can find. Some of them work as editors in your news organization. I know I've spoken to them extensively. How did they feel about your bringing artificial intelligence into the newsroom to help them make decisions, or maybe to supplement the decisions they were making? How did you manage that part of the culture change? Because it's very, as someone who's worked in a newsroom, it can be pretty sensitive.
Yeah. Well, firstly, there were no robots on any slides. So I'm sure you've all seen the robots on the slides for the past decade. They're still not around, so let's just drop that idea. I mean, I think people are scared of the term artificial intelligence. There's something in it that says we're going to fire you and replace you with a machine. So don't go that route. Talk about what it means. As I've tried to explain this morning, how do we make decisions in a paywall environment? How do we decide what is quality? What does quality mean? How do we put that metric together? What will people pay for? That all together bring in the tech that helps us make those decisions and frees up our journalists, our flesh and blood journalists, to do actual journalism, which is to go out there, get stories, hold power to account, ask the hard questions, do the digging, and have less people doing relatively simple and subjective activities, because that flesh and blood person who ranks the website or who decides what's more important or what should be locked or not is still a subjective human being, right? It's not like humans are perfect and machines are something weird. So, and also to take to empower your journalists in your newsroom to understand that they can actively decide what goes into this machine and they can change it, you know. So just to give the audience maybe a bit of background, the Sophi score, which is this kind of magical number, is put together by different weightings of conversion and acquisition and retention. So depending on where you are in your paywall journey, you can decide we want to focus much more on conversion. We're not so worried about the ones we have, or we are absolutely obsessed about keeping the subscribers we have and less so about getting new ones, or kind of 50-50 in the middle somewhere. And you can change it. You can actively change that metric. And still see the dashboard, still see what comes up, and still manually rank if you disagree. So I think it just, for me, it was how this helps us, how it makes us better journalists is what we do, how it helps us get more subscribers to be able to grow and a sustainable newsroom, add more colleagues. And we kept our word. Like I said to you, the CEO kept his word to me, and my colleagues saw there's new colleagues around them almost every month. And it is a fantastic place to be, you know, to be able to show that quality journalism brings in subscribers, brings in revenue, which means we can grow our newsroom further and produce more of that quality journalism that brings more revenue and grow the newsroom further. So it's a beautiful cycle if you can get it right. We are not perfect. We are not where we want to be. Of course, we want to double, even triple our subscription number. And I think the next 2 years is going to be hard, because I think those first subscribers you convert are the true blood news junkies, you know. My father has subscribed 3 times, but he's not going to do it again. So I think, you know, you need to now start to think, and I mean, there's amazing examples all over the world. I'm not going to mention the New York Times because we all know what they do, but there's the Globe and Mail, there's the Boston Globe, there's Gazeta Wyborcza in Poland that we saw yesterday, who does amazing things. There's Expressen in Sweden, and you know, everyone's experimenting with games, with lifestyle content, with weather apps. So I think it's a great phase, but I think it's going to be hard. You know, the stuff that worked for us for the past 2 years may not be the recipe for the future.
So when we're on stage 2 or 3 years from now, you can talk about how you tripled your subscriptions. That would be great. You also talked about the difference between content that converts people to be subscribers and the content that retains them. This sounds like a bit of a surprise, because, you know, when you first put up a paywall, we all tend to think quality content, it's one big bucket. But it sounds to me like you've clearly demarcated it into 2 separate buckets. Was this a surprise for you? What did you discover along the way?
So some of the content are always everywhere. So a big investigative corruption expose will bring you page views, it will convert new subscribers, and it will retain current and old subscribers. But the surprises are the interesting ones. So we often see lifestyle content, for example, and what we call lifestyle is arts, entertainment, relationships, sex, parenting, motoring, etc. We often see some of that content coming up through the acquisition funnel. So the retention funnel really shows you the what I called earlier, the news junkies, what they love can read. And we as editors, you kind of have a gut feel what that is, right? It's your big scoops, it's your political analysis, it's your kind of breaking news reportage. But you know, content like human interest stories, it's good to see and test your own assumptions about what that does for you and whether it's important. So it would be, on our retention dashboard, it's often the hard political story of the day, the breaking news story of the day, the investigation. On the acquisition, you see these other things coming through. Rugby, for example, is massive in South Africa. As you all know, we've got the best rugby team in the world. So, you know, people feel very strongly about every single decision affecting our Springbok team. So that content, when we have a scoop about who's going to be, elected or not, or what's going on inside the camp, or the Springbok that caused all the drama recently on an Emirates flight, you know, people love that stuff. And then you can see, oh, okay, here's a new cohort of readers that you maybe didn't think of previously as subscription targets, who absolutely are mad about everything to do with rugby. And then you have to look at your team. Do we have the right rugby writers? Do we have enough? Do we go deep enough? Do we actually feed this beast? So it goes both ways, you know. Your assumptions, which as editors I think we have a pretty good idea, but those surprises are the interesting ones for me.
So I think we'll open it up to questions in a couple of minutes. I think Wilson has a mic that he's going to pass around. But before we go there, tell me about some of the experiments you've run. You know, in the newsroom, when you're trying to think about subscriptions and keeping subscribers happy. Tell me about some of the things you've tried. I'm sure our friends in the audience would also be interested in that.
Look, we work very closely with our CRM team, our marketing team. So, you know, it was important for us to figure out who are our subscribers. Another thing that we're still learning is what's the difference between a free reader and a subscriber and a registered user in terms of everything: age, gender, where do they live, what do they read, how much do they earn. South Africa, of course, as you know, is a polarized history. And we, as a mainstream news publisher that wants to appeal to all South Africans, have to constantly be aware of those things, you know. And you make those decisions, right, about which type of music you write about or which type of sport do you rank over others. So I think we are still figuring out those pockets of readership that we haven't yet explored. We use newsletters a lot. That's hardly experiment, I guess, but you know, we do use newsletters, the traditional kind of morning, afternoon one. I've started doing my own newsletter every day at 5 p.m. where I literally pick the 10 stories on our site that I loved most during the day for our subscribers, and we publish that goes out to them at around 5 p.m. from under my name. Apparently that's the right thing to do, and people like it. They like the personal touch. I literally go and choose those stories, you know, and the readers appreciate that. They write back to me, and you start to form these kind of almost friendships, you know. So I think it's important to try a lot of things. Newsletters for us work. We also do newsletters when we have big breaking news, and we kind of package that because we've realized not all our readers are on our site every minute of the day. We would love that, but you know, they sometimes have to work and do other stuff. So, you know, you have to also think of them. You know, may they have missed something. We are pretty fast churning website. We have lots of news, lots of stuff going on in South Africa, and we do news, sport, business, and entertainment and lifestyle. So, you know, you may have actually missed a exclusive piece or a brilliant commentary that was published early this morning, but you haven't had time. You had to drop the kids and go to work. So we try to recycle some of that into our newsletters and give that to our subscribers. So curated newsletters is a big one. And then events. We've entered the brave world of events. You know, again, I guess it's not that unique, but we have started online events during COVID. We had a number of webinars, panels. I had some of my brilliant colleagues who are here with me on those panels. We bring in people from outside. We had one called the Editor's Table, where we want our subscribers to meet our journalists and get to see the people behind the bylines and get to know and understand them. They can also ask questions in those sessions if you're a subscriber. They get the first invites to these events. They get the ability, like I said, to participate in the discussion. And just a few weeks ago, we had our first big real-life summit, which we called On the Record, which was a summit about the future of South Africa, where we had 1,000 people buying tickets, many of them subscribers. We gave them obviously early access and a special rate. And we had the Chief Justice of South Africa and about 20 to 25 thought leaders, top politicians, thought leaders in South Africa on stage, moderated by myself and my colleagues. So, you know, those are all kinds of, I would say, things in the kind of quality bucket that you have to do if you've got a paywall. You can't just put up a paywall on what worked for you in the free vanity world. That's not going to work. You have to think quality, depth, insight, you know. If I pay for something, I want to know the truth. I want to know what's really going on. So yeah, events, newsletters. We've also, my colleagues in the commercial and marketing department does some very interesting special offers continuously on subscriptions. So Mother's Day was a big success apparently. They did a special Mother's Day offer where people could buy a subscription for their mothers or their partners or their grannies or whoever mothers in their universe. And yeah, we keep on trying.
And I know that there are many people here who are at different points of the journey of putting in place a paywall. What advice, based on your 2 years of experience, what advice would you give to them? If you had to do it again, what would you do differently? I'm sure you've learned a lot over the past 2 years.
Well, firstly, I think I remember sitting at a conference like this in 2016, I think, in Vienna. I think it was the WAN Europe, Digital Europe. And I remember someone on stage saying, "Who thinks paywalls will save journalism?" Everyone was laughing. Ha ha ha, no, paywalls, nobody's going to, it's just the New York Times that can have a paywall. And here we are in 2022. I firmly believe paywalls is an absolute part of our future. I think there's absolutely no shame in asking people to pay for news. Why must news be free? Why must quality journalism be free? Why must it, just because it's on the internet, be free? So I think in South Africa still we are changing that behavior because we gave it away for free for 20 years. If I say we, I mean my predecessors, but I mean, the world gave away news for free for 20 years because the internet was free. But we have to change that behavior. So you have to start now. You have to start telling people and educating your readers what journalism is. We've heard yesterday in numerous sessions that the onus is on us to educate our readers about what journalism is. What is journalism? What do journalists do when they get into their little Toyotas and go out into the field, Why is it important? How does it sustain democracy? So I think, for me, subscriptions is part of that story, and you have to tell that story. Things we could have done different. I think maybe we could have explained even more to our readers about why we're doing this, how it will work going forward. I think you cannot over-explain and tell your readers with confidence why you're doing this and what the future of journalism look like. And take them into your confidence. Share with them the world we are in, where advertising go to 2 or 3 American companies, and that we have to sustain journalism through other means now. That's a story to be told. So I think rather overshare with your readers, trust them, build a trust relationship, and realize that they are no longer just UB numbers, that they are people with opinions and with views, and respond to them. They comment. We have a comment section again after we closed it previously, but we brought it back. Also with AI built into it. You have your kind of scale of your appetite for risk that you can set, but the machine is very good. It filters out most of the hateful stuff. Only subscribers can comment, and the moment we dig in there and become part of the conversation as journalists and editors, the quality goes up immediately, and it becomes a very interesting conversation, and you actually learn something and may get a story or two. Great. I think we have a question.
I have a question for you, Adriaan. You are very good in audio and video as well. You've invested a lot in podcasts, and so I wanted to know how that play in the paywall strategy. And Sophie, do you? Sonali, sorry.
It's all good.
Does Sophie help in curating that kind of content, or is it not yet there?
So Sophie doesn't create content. It's just a decision-making engine.
Sorry, curate.
Oh, curate.
Sorry.
Yes, Sophie does curate content, and I can tell you more about it later if you'd like. It's really based on what content is most valuable to you and the parameters that your editors set, because it should look and feel like the page is being run by your very talented editors. That's the idea. It shouldn't look like an algorithm is doing it. So editors specify what kind of content can fit where. For example, they might say, oh, this is the top news widget. I have 10 stories here. It's on the homepage, so I want a mix of different types of content. So no more than 2 articles on politics, no more than 3 articles on business, and none of these articles should be more than 12 hours old. Whereas this is the in case you missed it widget. It has a lot of features. So these articles can be up to 4 days old, and I don't want more than 1 recipe, 1 car review, 1 personal finance article, etc. So it definitely can do that. I should let you answer the other part of the question.
Yeah, so it's very much part of our content mix. So if we publish a video or a podcast, it's also listed as an article on Sophi dashboard, so we can see if the article does well or not. So to let you into some successes and failures. So some of our podcasts have been some of the best converters of subscribers. We did one on a very terrible murder of a young student, for which her boyfriend was arrested at Stellenbosch University, and then after a long trial he was acquitted, and it turns out that the police completely messed up the case and wanted to frame the boyfriend because they were basically too lazy to find the real murderer. But and this happened 15 years ago, but we for the first time got, through a freelance journalist who works with us, got interviews with the boyfriend, and we had audio that was never released before of some of the evidence that the police collected but never showed the court. And we put this together in a serial format of, I think it was 5 or 6 episodes. It converted like mad. People just love true crime podcasts in South Africa. So, you know, we have lots of crime, so let's just, you know, use it to our advantage, I guess. So that one did very well. But on the other hand, we do a weekly podcast called The Story, where we basically speak to our journalists about the biggest story of the week. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes there's just not an appetite, and people don't listen to it. So some of them we will not lock, because we also believe that the paywall in South Africa, we're a bit behind the curve, I think, in terms of paywall. So not paywalls, podcasts. So I think we want to first create that behavior of podcast listening to all our readers, not just the subscribers, and then hopefully convert them. But ones like this exclusive one, we will always lock, because it's content you can't get anywhere else.
Thank you. I'm a subscriber.
Thank you.
And I think you're very cheap. But I would be pissed off if you charged me more, because other people would get less. Yeah. However, I mean, that's something you would have to figure out. But considering that I know the rate I pay for your subscription, and maybe it's a discount, I don't know, and you have that number of subscribers, I'm interested what % of your revenue it contributes to, because it seems to me it must be quite low still in terms of your costs. And I know that even as a subscriber, I get a ton of ads. In fact, it's irritating because there are too many ads. But how do you see the contribution of subscriber revenue in relation to advertising, which you still are getting?
So my understanding is that the company wants to bring it to 50-50, but we're not there yet. We're absolutely not there yet. Subscriptions is a new revenue stream. It's fantastic money. I mean, like I said, I could literally go to our CEO and say, well, we've given you X amount of subscribers. Now I want X amount of journalists, and they did it. You know, so we, you know, from that perspective, it's nice for the newsroom to see that we can grow the size of our journalism. But yeah, no, Guy, you're right. We haven't. We're still lucky because we're the biggest website in South Africa by quite a distance. So we still get substantial advertising revenue from mostly direct ad sales, actually not programmatic, to the big banks, cell phone companies, insurance companies, etc. But as you all know, that's an unsure world. You know, it's not something you can build, I think, or should build a journalism newsroom for the future on. It's nice while it's there, and sorry, but you're going to have to keep on seeing those ads because it does pay the bills. But, you know, I would love us to get to a space where we don't only reach 50, but where our reader revenue surpasses our advertising. I think that would be ideal. But let's see if we can get there. Hopefully we can. The pricing is an interesting one. I mean, it's as an editor, I gave my input, but it wasn't finally my call, of course. But, you know, again, I mean, if you subscribe to the New York Times, if you've ever tried to unsubscribe to the New York Times, it's impossible. You know, they literally call you and want to pay you to stay on as a subscriber. So, I mean, I think we should also learn from the best. You know, like you absolutely have to keep your subscribers and build your subscription base, and then see what you do, what levers you can pull. I had an interesting chat with Deirdre Velden from the Irish Times yesterday, because they did a very specific offer to students at universities, which is something we haven't done and explored. So maybe there's an avenue also to get young people back into news. We see that they're falling out of news. So like to build your brand loyalty, to introduce the concepts of journalism to them at a young age at university. You know, we have to experiment and try these things. Yeah.
How much do you charge? How does it compare to what Netflix costs?
Now I'm going to have to do math. You should have warned me about that. So it's 75 Rand, which is, what is that? The Rand dollar is 118.
Okay.
So I mean, it's like $3.5 a month, $3.50 a month. Yeah.
And how does that compare to another subscription like
So
Netflix?
no, so it's cheaper than Netflix in South Africa. Netflix charges 120 rand now. Yeah, slightly more even.
To about
So
half the
it's
price.
it's about, we started at about the same level, but Netflix has really gone up their price over the past few months. I'm sure you all know. It is on par with other subscription platforms in South Africa.
Oh, okay.
So around 100 rand a month. But it is cheaper than Netflix or Disney Plus or those services. But I mean, people pay. We have a long tradition of pay TV in South Africa, sport, for example, and those prices were here, like much higher than what we charge for subscription. So I think we went for a kind of a middle of the road price, which is probably working. But there's lots of discounts going around.
Is this on? Hi, Tony Glencross, Uganda. 2 questions. How many of your subscribers are in South Africa, and how many of them are outside of South Africa? Then I see there's 2 ways of subscribing, either through Apple, through the app and the Play Store, or as a direct debit order. What is the split between the Apple Play Store app subscribers and the direct debit order subscribers? Sure. And then just an opportunity, perhaps, and I'm a subscriber. You're missing an opportunity because all of your magazines are available in PDF going back 12 issues, and you're not marketing that. I discovered them by accident.
Thanks for that. Look, well, please, let's talk about that afterwards, because as far as I know, the magazines are part of the subscription. You have to subscribe. Okay. Look, so yeah, point well taken. The magazine titles, I should have said this earlier, but basically News24 as the biggest English brand is our hero English paywall. So as a company, we decided we're not going to launch a paywall for each separate magazine or newspaper. So in our News24 paywall, you also have women magazines, women interest magazines, general interest magazines, a travel magazine, etc. On subscribers in and outside, I don't have that stats. I don't have the data, unfortunately, but I suspect it's very, very high inside South Africa. I think it's probably 90% plus inside South Africa if I look at the comments and in the interaction. Debit cards or debit orders and credit cards or Apple is interesting. So at first we saw when we launched the paywall a big Apple subscribers through the App Store. So we saw a lot of Apple coming through, but over time credit cards has overtaken. So credit cards is now by far about 40% of our subscribers pay with credit card. Then there's still Apple second, and then debit order a distant third. Credit card brings its own complexities, as you know, they expire, but there's fantastic tech around that we also use where people get warned beforehand, etc.
I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has one. Someone at the back there.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about Sophi. Have you tried anything with other languages other than English language, like Arabic, Urdu, whatever languages? And if yes, is it successful or not? Thank you.
So I'll tell you honestly that it works very well in Romance languages, so Indo-European languages generally. It does not work well in languages that go from right to left. It just does not. And it's not just us. I know that this is a problem that a lot of NLP experts in the world struggle with. It's just not easy to do. Or it hasn't been easy so far, and maybe when we speak again in a couple of years, I'll have a different answer. So there's another session on AI this afternoon before we wrap up, on AI in the newsroom, where we'll be speaking to the chief data scientist at the New York Times, at Nikkei, which is an incredible organization that's done a lot of interesting things with data science, as well as a couple of others. So please come and hear about that, because it touches on many of the issues that Adriaan raised today, and you'll get a much broader perspective from a larger group of people. And thank you so much for joining us, Adriaan. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And once again, thank you to Sofani and Adriaan for sharing. And the sessions are coming up next is at 11:30 in the same room. So you can actually pop by later. Thank you.